All right, and welcome back, everybody, to the Conference USA Roundtable. I am joined with my fellow podcasting mates from the Conference USA Roundtable. Um, for those, we didn't plug this the last two times we did this episode, but we're a lot of us here. I think all of us here are a member, except for Ben, of course, from March to the Pod. But a lot of us here are members of the College Huddle. So, of those that don't follow us already, and that collaborative group, as we move towards the opening weekend of college football. The College Huddle is over 70 collaborative podcasts across Division I football. So if you're not getting enough of college football, especially from Conference USA with us, don't forget to stop by the Twitter account over there at College Huddle, as well as our website, thecollegehuddle.com. Plenty of write-ups, as well as fellow collaborative efforts on the podcasting front, which, of course, you'll hear from a lot of us as the season moves forward, as well as those of us here when we move into conference play. But gentlemen, we're here today as it was just posted on the Twitter account of at Blue Raider Pod. For those that missed it already, we have our offensive skill rankings that was posted and was voted on by all of us, and I'll pop that up for us now. Not very many surprises there at the top, but the honorable mentions we had quite a few sprinkling throughout the conference. So I'm excited to hear as we get started here. Sorry for starting a little bit late, but we'll go through here everyone as far as what their rankings were, who they had on their team, as well as maybe touch a little bit on your own programs for those that weren't mentioned. Give us some insight as far as the offensive skill positioning. So, at the top we've got no surprise, Liberty once again. So I'll turn things over to Ben for him to share a little bit about the Flames.
Yes, sir. Sorry, I was trying to get this out to the different people in the Flames Nation. So yeah, man, we got a heck of a squad coming back. We've had a couple of transfers coming in. Julian Gray from NC State being one of them. But we'll take it from the top, literally. Quentin Cooley. I know a lot of y'all might be playing college football 25, so you'll be playing Quentin Cooley at times. He's a bowling ball of a running back, and he had 1,400 yards last year. He's a guy that really doesn't go down when tackled. He was a guy that transferred from Wake Forest. He led the team in touchdowns as well. But there's some sneaky picks that I want to go through, and we can get into Trayon Sibley as well, who's a wide receiver who has the notorious moment now of what was it? I think it was like Midwest Sports or something like that. Had posted a video of him in college football where it was a trick play against Tennessee, and he decided to have a glitch and put the ball down at the 1 yard line. So he's getting a little bit of notoriety for that. But he was a route runner who kind of has more of a running back body. He's got a lot to him that's going to be interesting. He's kind of our number one right now, but we have a couple of other guys on our depth chart like Markel Fortenberry, Tyson Mobley, who's a Coastal Carolina transfer. And then also another kind of interesting guy that's going to play a lot into this is Kylan Austin. I'm really excited to see how he does. And there's a couple other wide receivers like Reese Smith from West Virginia who will have some things that will make an impact on this team. Some tight ends like Bentley Hanshaw and Austin Henderson. But it really starts back at Cooley and then Billy Lucas, the running back transfer last year from Duquesne, who unfortunately had some injury bugs but throughout the season. But he's a very talented running back. He might be, in my opinion, right now the most effective, elusive runner on this team. You look at Cooley as more of a bowling ball, Lucas a little bit more of an elusive one cut back, and then you got a couple other guys on the roster like Vaughn Blue who can really mix it up. And he was a freshman last year who was starting as the pitch role, but unfortunately got hurt and was able to save that red shirt to reserve eligibility of a year. So there's a lot to this skill group at Liberty, but the biggest loss being CJ Daniels going to LSU. That's going to be a problem that we will have to, and a hole that we will have to fill. It's going to be interesting who steps up. A lot of the key players that I just mentioned. I think the dark horse is Dante Lee, a transfer from Shaw College, a D2 college, who was a D2 All-American. He's a guy that they can look to, but also Tyson Mobley, the wily vet who is coming from Coastal Carolina, who's never really panned out to be the guy that they wanted at Coastal, and now gets another shot, kind of a la Aaron Bedgood from last year. So we're really excited to have this skill team. You know, you can see us at number 1, and then I believe number 3 with Sibley, Treyon Sibley. There's a lot of weapons, but a lot of unknowns. And I try to warn people this year, there's a lot more unknowns than last year. We may have some knowns like Cooley and Salter, but in the wide receiver room, especially, we don't have a CJ Daniels. We don't have a Noah Frith. So it's going to make things very interesting. And there's some other players as well that I'm probably forgetting that we're looking forward to having this season as well.
Is that the first time we've ever heard Ben be a little bit shaky about his team for once? I think that I heard a little bit of concern there about the wide receiver group. I mean, I had noted, you know, you lose 4 of your top 5. I mean, is that genuinely an area that you think you're concerned? I mean, you run the ball so well. I think Liberty should be okay.
That's why I made the joke a couple weeks ago that it doesn't matter. You know, you're still going to have to stop the run before you get to worried about the pass, you know. But there's a lot of talent, man. There's a lot of talent in this wide receiver room. It's just so unproven, especially Tyson Mobley, man. He's a guy that's, I think, got a pretty good ceiling for what he is, but he's just been injury plagued. So, and Treyon Sibley, it's kind of funny you guys mention it because I don't know if he'll be the top receiver at the end of the year, and that's no diss to Sibley, you know. So,
absolutely. Well, excellent stuff. You already hit the 1 and the 3 there, and then we'll turn things over to the number 2 spot. Again, kind of a unanimous number 2 was Noah Smith from Sam Houston State. So Ben, I'm interested to hear your take on him as well as what the Bearcats look like on the offensive skill side of things.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll hit on just kind of my list too. Of course, like I think most of us did, but I had Quentin Cooley, number 1, just bowling ball. Loved watching him play last year. Was super impressive. So he was my number 1. I had Noah Smith, number 2, where he ended up in the rankings. Sibley 3, so it was pretty much dead on there. And then had Sean Brown, tight end from Jack State, there at number 4. I think he's super impressive, can do a little bit of everything. And then Monty Watkins was 5th for me, the running back from New Mexico State. Wasn't their lead back last year, but averaged 10 yards a carry, 59 carries, 572 yards. And so I think he's the guy for them this year. And I think he's a guy that kind of flies under the radar. He was in our honorable mention section, but really like what he brings to the table. When it comes to Sam Houston, I think Sam Houston's a team this year where every position across the board, they're average except for the skill group. I think that's kind of the group that they're going to excel with this year. I think Phil Steele had our wide receivers ranked 2nd in the conference, only behind Liberty. So even kind of in the national media, it's getting some publicity. So starting with the receivers, obviously Noah Smith comes back, had a huge year last year, just really fits Brad Cornelson's scheme really well. Don't know if he'll have the same exact numbers as he did last year, just because we've brought in so many weapons and we're finally healthy. So I don't know if he's going to get as many touches, but just super talented. It's going to be really good. Ife Day comes back. He was our leading receiver the year we won the national title and the year after. So he was out all last year due to injury. So he's back. That's going to be a huge boost. It's his 6th year with us. I think he won the 100-meter dash in Texas when he was in high school. I think he ran a 10.2. So one of the fastest guys in the country. And then just continuing at the receiver position, you've got a guy named Quavez Humphreys, who I try to pub as much as I can, but just seeing him last year, he was hurt, but got to see him in training camp. Got to see him some in training camp this year, but I think he's the most talented player on the entire roster. 6'4", 225, can jump out the gym. I mean, just unbelievable what he can do. So those are your top 3. You've got, I mean, just a ton of depth at receiver. Malik Phillips had 450 yards last year. He's probably your number 6 guy. Simeon Evans is probably number 5. Simeon started the final game of the year last year against Middle Tennessee, only game he started. during his time at Sam Houston. He had 120 yards. You bring in almost 1,000-yard receiver from the JUCO ranks, and Michael Phoenix, and then you've also got Lonnie Atkinson, who's the top-rated recruit on the offensive side in school history going into his second year, and he took a big leap. So the receiver position is definitely stacked. At running back, you've got John Gentry coming back. He was your leading rusher from last year, can do a little bit of everything. Zach Hrbacek is back. He was your leading rusher in 2022, but missed pretty much all last year due to injury. And then the other name to note, running back, is Jay Ducker. He missed pretty much all last year due to injury at Memphis, but in 2022 led Memphis in rushing. And then as a freshman at Northern Illinois in 2021, had over 1,000 yards and was MAC Freshman of the Year. And then at tight end, the name to know is Elijah Sohn. Can do a little bit of everything. Most of the other guys that are in that unit are mainly used for blocking, but Elijah Sohn looked really good in the spring, can provide a lot in the passing game. So really excited about this skill unit. I think it's probably top 2-3 in the conference, and really excited to see what they do this year.
Now, Ben, how do you make the case for the skill position units with the quarterback committee, or the quarterback still at question? You know, it's hard to have confidence in those guys. So that's one thing I think is interesting. I don't disagree with your sentiment that they're tops of the conference, but with a question at QB, you know, where does that confidence come from?
Yeah, I think no matter who starts this next year, it's really coming down to two guys, whether it be Jace Bauer or Hunter Watson. Bauer coming from Central Michigan, and then Watson won the JUCO national title last year. I think both of them are seen as an upgrade over Keegan Shoemaker. And once this offense kind of found its footing last year, it was kind of a middle-of-the-road offense towards the end of the year. So I think being healthy at all your skill positions going into the year, and then having an upgrade at quarterback will help. And then whoever is your starting quarterback is going to fit the scheme much better. It's a scheme that is very motion dependent, wants to run the quarterback a little bit, have the quarterback use its legs, and we just couldn't really do that last year. So they're going to be able to play into more of your scheme and your system, because towards the end of last year, you couldn't really run it with Shoemaker. You were down to your 8th running back. You had a linebacker playing running back when we played Louisiana Tech. You were down probably 5 of your top 7 receivers. And so it was just feed the ball to Noah Smith as much as possible. And so guys being healthy, quarterback upgrade, and then a quarterback that better fits the scheme, I think has people excited.
Absolutely. Well, good stuff from Ben. March to the pod there for Sam Houston State. Fourth in our rankings as we move on is going to be Sean Brown, the tight end. I can't believe a tight end made our top 5 list here for the O skill positions, but Sean Brown is arguably the best tight end. I could probably make the case for Holden Willis at MTSU. However, he's more of a slot tight end hybrid, so I don't know that he even fits the tight end category. But to give Jacksonville State, we're missing our friend Caleb William from the 700 Pelham Road podcast, but to give Jackson State a little bit of preview on their offensive skill group, I don't know that Sean Brown is even really their key guy. I mean, with only 300 yards of offense production last year and 5 touchdowns, which is why it's kind of odd that he makes the list, but he definitely is a coveted tight end because he's a true tight end. He's a two-way tight end. He's a great run blocker, and he's obviously great in the passing game. But to preview Jacksonville State season, they've got a lot of transfers all over the field. So it's interesting to see what they're going to be capable of doing. I've got Tavarish Dawson, the transfer from Colorado, and then Brandon Spector, who's from Clemson. 2 guys that didn't have a lot of playing experience at the P4, but you don't make P4 rosters and get some starts there with by mistake. So we'll see what those guys are capable of doing. And then for the most part, it's going to be a running back by committee, at least on paper. And I'm sure that Caleb would have a little bit more insight into that. But when you look at it, they've got Ron Wiggins coming back from injury, 500-yard running back, 5 touchdowns in only 7 games. You got Andrew Paul, who actually made I believe did make the honorable mention list. The transfer from Georgia, played quite a few games at Georgia. Highly coveted running back out of high school when he committed to Georgia. So that's kind of an interesting name to see where he pops up on Conference USA's list of running backs by the end of the year. And then Trey Stewart, who is a D2 transfer from Limestone University. Nearly a 1,400-yard runner. It's tough to kind of gauge where those guys fall when they go from D2 all the way up to FBS, but he has the numbers. He had the pedigree in his years there at D2, so D2 Limestone. So it'll be interesting to see again what happens with Jacksonville State in the offensive skill position with all these new pieces as they have. But lastly, we'll turn into our fifth spot, who is, again, I don't think a surprise to many with Dalvin Smith. They're from WKU, and talking on behalf of Western Kentucky is Topper Talk. We've got Stephen Moffitt with us. Stephen, tell us a little bit about those Toppers.
I do have one correction to make to the Bens. The Bens were tied for number 2 in the wide receiver rankings in Phil Steele's book. WKU was the clear number 1 in that position ranking. So let me dust that book off and puff the chest out a little bit, because it's kind of crazy to think that you lose a Malachi Corley, a 3rd-round draft pick, all-time great wide receiver here at Western Kentucky, and you're still have the best wide receiver position group in Conference USA, but I think it's really not even close. And when I made my top 5 list, I was very WKU heavy, just admittedly biased. I did have Cooley and Sibley were my 1 and 2. I had Dalvin Smith as my number 3. I think he's really going to benefit from having a more athletic quarterback behind center this year. Probably the worst kept secret in conference is that TJ Finley is, going to be the heir apparent to the QB1 job. Right now it's up in the air, on paper, is it going to be Caden Veltkamp or TJ Finley? But just the pedigree TJ has, it's going to be him. And he's just a stud of an athlete and just going to make this offense better. And I really think, the offense that a lot of the new teams in Conference USA saw from WKU last year wasn't indicative of where we've been over the last decade. When we've been, top 3, top 5 scoring offense and passing offense, we've led the FBS in passing for the last 10 years. So just so many injuries last year across our skill positions, put a lot of pressure on Malachi Corley. But this year, looking at the team, having Dalvin Smith coming in on paper right now, he's wide receiver 1 for us. He really capped off last year with that huge game against ODU in the bowl game. 3 touchdowns, had just a couple ridiculous one-handed grabs. He's just a freak of an athlete. He's always been kind of a gadget, gimmicky player for us. But because he's been buried behind so many really, really good wide receivers, several that are going on to play pro. And now he's going to get his chance to just shine. And he's, 6'3", was a heck of a basketball player when he played in high school. Just one of the best athletes I've ever seen on the field. And I can't wait to see him shine in that wide receiver role. And then I had Elijah Young as my next skill player. I think we saw the last couple of years that we have been really running back by committee. And last year, as the season played out, it really started to turn to where Elijah Young just really separated himself as the lead running back. He was getting the lion's share of the carries. He was making the big plays, breaking tackles, good blocker, can catch the ball in the backfield. Just a really, really explosive player when he has the ball in his hands. And that's really what we predicate our offense around, is just putting guys in space and let them go make a play. And then kind of it's a stretch, because I think this player is underrated in my opinion. And we were just talking about tight ends. I think Conference USA has really good skill players and several really good tight ends that were already mentioned. But I think River Helms coming in, had a little bit of a breakout season last year. Again, there's a lot of injuries, just a lot of inconsistency in our offense in general. But I think as we start humming and start clicking this year, there was a point in time where Western Kentucky was a tight end university. We were sending tight ends to the NFL year after year after year. And I think River Helms is going to step in and kind of reestablish that position and just the greatness, that he is as an athlete. And then just continue to look at our wide receiver room and why I think we're just so deep and dangerous there. We have Mike Matheson coming back from injury. Last year, I think he was a preseason 2nd or 3rd team Phil Steele Conference USA player. Didn't play 1 snap last year. He got hurt in fall camp. Had an injury that just never healed properly, sat out the whole season. He's back this year, and I feel like he's flying under the radar. He's not been on any of the preseason teams as a wide receiver, a kick returner that he used to do as well. But he's going to be right there. He's dangerous. If he gets the ball in his hands, he's explosive. He's fast. I think he's going to wake people up and make them remember who he is. And then I keep putting shine on Keyshawn Johnson, a transfer from Alabama State that we have. I really think that he's going to be a player that steps into that Malachi Corley type of role. He really has that build and that athleticism and that aggressive running style that Malachi had. You can't teach somebody that goes out and seeks contact and wants to run through somebody instead of around somebody like Malachi did. And I think Keyshawn is one of those types of players. And he just has a chip on his shoulder. If you follow him on social media, if you watch his training videos, he's ready to get to this level and just prove how good of a wide receiver he is. And I think in this WKU system and the offense, just health willing, that was kind of the big stumbling point last year was we couldn't stay healthy. Across the offensive line, across the wide receiver room, there was just a lot of health issues last year. I think a lot of the fan base thinks it can't be that bad 2 years in a row, but I really think he's somebody that's going to step up and also surprise a lot of people. And I just think that's why we have far and away the best wide receiver room in Conference USA.
And you got to feel really good about that. As you talked about with the quarterback situation, I think TJ Finley is going to be. I think we were all under the impression that he's going to be QB1. But to add to what you're saying there, I had noted, and you corrected me. You feel pretty confident that there is a wide receiver 1, there is an RB1. I think but I want you to kind of again expand upon that depth there because you've got that Elon transfer who has great Jalen Hampton, I believe is his name. You got to feel good about the depth there again for whoever happens to step up to take the reins at quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, there's depth across the board. I mean, Jalen Hampton's coming in with experience. We have LT Sanders that's been here a couple years at running back. We got a couple more wide receivers. Easton Messer, that was a freshman last year. Also a punt returner, just really made a mark last year. Musa Berry was a freshman last year. There's just depth across the board. And I felt the same way last year coming into the season that we had a ton of depth, even though we had just lost, again, several, 2-3 wide receivers to eligibility and transferring, et cetera. But we still just had this deep wide receiver room. And I think it's not any different this year as it's been the last 3 or 4 years. It's just all going to boil down to health. Because I think this offense and what Tyson Helton wants to do is score a lot of points. And last year, I think we were around 28 points per game when historically we had been closer to 40, if not above 40 points per game. So I think we get back to that this year, being a 40-point per game scorer. Now, defensively, I don't know, it might be shootouts every game, but I just think our depth and our offense is going to be able to compete with anyone and put points on the board.
Good stuff. Well, moving on to my rankings there. Next on the honorable mentions, or I should say tops of the honorable mentions, was Holden Willis, and we had his name come up quite a bit there for those that had voted for him. And I'm not necessarily surprised that he got votes because he is the second leading receiver returning in Conference USA behind Noah Smith at Sam Houston State. So one thing that's interesting with his game and what MTSU is going to be doing this year is we have a new offensive coordinator, obviously a new head coach. So really, we don't know exactly where he fits into that new system. I preface that he's going to be kind of a hybrid. We saw him in the spring game where he played the slot. So Holden Willis's game kind of knows no bounds. As far as him being a two-way tight end, much like Sean Brown, I wouldn't put him in that same category. Or even like River Helms, as Steven just brought up. I think Holden Willis has a different dynamic to his game as a tight end, as a receiving tight end, but doesn't really play that two-way style. But as far as the rest of the skill position goes for the Blue Raiders, the running back position, we return everybody, which was incredible. We had a few that had entered the portal, and they opted to stay at MTSU when the news of Derek Mason was coming here. So that's excellent news for the Blue Raiders. The names there are Frank Peasant and then Flip Krettel. Those two are 2-year starters now for MTSU. Both of them they've nearly eclipsed 1,000 yards career while being at MTSU. But Frank Peasant's kind of your bowling ball inside the 10-yard line back. He's going to be your third down back. And then Flip does a little bit of everything. He's a good downhill runner, but he can move out of the backfield, catch. He can kind of do it all. So I like the dynamic that they have there, the dichotomy of those two running backs. And then the wide receiver is something that a lot of us Blue Raider fans have been concerned about going into the season, because we have a big turnover at the wide receiver position. But we were able to pick up 2 SEC transfers and Omari Kelly from Auburn. Again, another highly touted wide receiver that we're very lucky to have. He's an athlete. I think he's a guy that if he's not on anyone's radar now, which I don't blame you for not being on your radar because he's had very little Division I experience at his time at Auburn. But seeing what I saw at camp at the spring game, I think that this guy has the ability to play on Sundays. He's got the speed. He's got the hands. It's really a matter of him staying healthy. And then same goes for Gamarian Carter. I don't put him in the same tier of athleticism that we see with Omari Kelly, but he transfers in from Vanderbilt, has the athleticism. I think I saw people will think that this is a mistake, but I want to say that he had a box jump height over his standing height of 6'1". The kid's a freak athlete. I'll be interested to see what he's capable of doing this year and see where he fits into the system because, again, I don't consider him even wide receiver 2 right now. He may be a guy that fits into the 11 personnel third wide receiver option. So there's a lot that is to play out when fall camp opens up this week for the Blue Raiders to see exactly what the depth looks like at wide receiver because it's just there's not a lot of guys there behind Omari Kelly. So I don't know. I don't consider myself optimistic. I feel good about our top end guys like Holden Willis, Omari Kelly, obviously Frank Peason and Flip, but past those 4 guys, it's still kind of a survival of the fittest right now. So, but we'll move on to the rest of our O-Skill guys in our honorable mentions list here. We've got Andrew Paul, the Georgia transfer that I was telling you about over at Jacksonville State, Monte Watkins at New Mexico State, one of the few guys that didn't go to Vanderbilt but decided to stay at New Mexico State. Elijah Young, as Stephen had already mentioned, and then Javon Jackson, the Austin Peay transfer to UTEP. And I would love to do a little piece on that, but I don't want to leave my other fellow Jake hanging. He's sat here patiently waiting his turn, and I think he's at the disadvantage of having the running back room entirely returning. You've got so many weapons there. So I hate that you guys didn't have any that necessarily made the honorable mentions, but much like I prefaced there, you've got a lot of depth and you guys should be excited down there in Miami.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that the fact that no FIU Panther made the list is kind of insane, at least at the very least an honorable mention spot, because we have a couple of really high-quality players that we're excited to see develop this season as they get a bit more experience under their belt. But as far as 1, 2, and 3, I of the O-skill position list, I think it absolutely makes a lot of sense. I would have personally snuck Dean Patterson at the 5 spot of this list. Dean Patterson is bringing a lot of excitement to the wide receiver position here in the 305. He made the All-CUSA preseason second team for both Athlon and Phil Steele. Funnily enough, he's usually regarded as a better punt returner than he is a receiver, but he's still such an amazing receiver. He's had some of his best games against high-quality opponents, such as Liberty and Western Kentucky. He even had a monster game against Arkansas last season of the SEC. But no, as far as experience in the wide receiver position goes for FIU, there's no one that I feel more confidently will be wide receiver 1 than Dean. He had an absolutely great season last year that was actually overshadowed by Chris Mitchell, who has unfortunately left Notre Dame, but 423 yards, a touchdown, 28 receptions, very solid numbers for a two-way player that specialized in both offense and special teams. But I think Dean Patterson, especially in these practices, has developed an extra amount of leadership and is really honed in on his skills. I think he's going to be an absolutely fantastic player for Kewan Jenkins to throw the ball to. And like I said, I believe in an earlier episode that if lights out, Kewan Jenkins is having an amazing season for FIU, then that means that Dean Patterson is likely also going to be having an amazing season because I think that's going to be his main target. Now, the wide receiver position and running back positions for FIU are very different in the sense that one of them has very few veterans, but a lot of transfers, and the other is vice versa. The vice versa being the running back room, but one returner for the running back room for the Panthers that I would have stuck into the honorable mentions list is Shamari Lawrence, who, again, bringing a lot of optimism to the room, which had its ups and downs last season. But I think Lawrence overall was a very solid back that's entering his redshirt junior year. He has a lot of hype surrounding him as well. He was also made to a couple of All-CUSA preseason second and third teams. But 566 yards, 4 touchdowns for the Panthers last season, 125 carries. Funnily enough, one of his best performances was in the first game of the season against Louisiana Tech when he had a 67-yard house call, which was awesome to see. He was a really great running back, but he was also He was also accompanied by Keyshawn Owens, who is also returning for the FIU Panthers. He got 452 yards and 5 touchdowns off 80 carries. Very similar statistics when you combine both Lawrence and Owens. That's over 1,000 yards from both guys. I thought they were a very great duo last season for the Panthers, and now they're going to be accompanied by none other than Lexington Joseph, who had to miss all of last season due to injury, but prior to that was an absolutely astonishingly good running back for the Panthers. So it's going to be interesting to see where the offense sort of puts flex in the mix between Owens and Lawrence. But yeah, as his final season with the Panthers as a grad student, you also have to really feel confident that Lexington will get plenty of snaps and that he's going to be absolutely amazing. 536 yards in the 2022 season. I mean, it says enough. He was absolutely tremendous. And now we have a 3-headed monster at the running back position. To go back to the receivers, like I had mentioned, we got a bunch of transfers, but I want to highlight 2 specifically right now. The first one is Desna Washington, formerly known as DJ Washington, transfer from New Mexico. He's a 6'5" grad student that has really good route running and really good hands. And the fact that he's that tall could prove that he could be a great option as far as double coverage or even just lobs deep to the field. I'm very excited to see how he performs in an FIU uniform week 1 against Indiana. I'm that excited to see how he could, if he deserves to be in that wide receiver 2 position. I mean, it's very exciting to see. And then aside from that, I also want to highlight Nazaviah Burris. He's a grad student coming from the Stetson Hatters of FCS. He's basically one of the best receivers Stetson has had in a very, very long time. I mean, and he didn't even play that much last season because he redshirted early, but still very solid statistics for his time with the Hatters. And that's pretty much how I see the difference between receivers and running backs. Very different as far as who's on the rosters, but they both have a lot of talent. Some of it kind of obvious because of the veterans, and some of the others will have to wait and see how they perform in an actual game. But aside from, I do want to quickly mention tight ends because FIU is one of those offenses that don't really prioritize tight ends as far as actual skill positions. They pretty much treat them as additional blockers, but do keep an eye out on Rocky Beers, one of the best names in college football. But no, Rocky Beers had a couple of really great highlights last season for the Panthers. He was the only tight end that actually caught a touchdown last season for FIU, and it was in the season finale against Western Kentucky. But no, he's a really good player and obviously a very solid blocker as well. So interested to see what he can bring to this team as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the all college football name Rocky Beers there. I was excited to get him a little highlight, but I want to put it back on you there with the depth you talk about at wide receiver and running back. I mean, how do you see that PT playing out for those guys? I mean, that's quite the logjam. You've got nearly 600-yard rushers, or at least at some point in time. So, I mean, how does that logjam work itself out for you guys?
I do want to mention that Rocky Beers' brother, Rowdy Beers, also has an absolutely insane top-tier college football name. However, he's actually leaving the program to pursue becoming a firefighter, so we, of course, wish him the best of luck. But, yeah, there's a lot of big bodies in that wide receiver room, that all of which could earn the wide receiver 2 and 3 spots. The only wide receiver 1 player I feel confident that he will actually achieve that is going to be Dean Pedersen, because he brings both the talent and experience to this team, which I think is somewhat lacking in the wide receiver room specifically. But no, there's a lot of players that on that wide receiver room that could certainly make a spot in wide receiver 2. If like I had mentioned, I feel really good in Desna just because he provides a bit of variety, being not necessarily the fastest player on the field, but one of the tallest and one of the best hands that we could see for the Panthers. And like I mentioned earlier, Burris is also a wild card. We do have a few returners as far as the wide receiver positions, but the problem is you can't really correlate some of the returning players to how they did last season, because last season was really highlighted by Chris Mitchell and what he brought to the Panthers last year. If our friends at Western Kentucky called them the tight end university, FIU has been something of a wide receiver university in recent years, with players like Chris Mitchell bringing standout talent that unfortunately the transfer portal has made it so that they can find other teams elsewhere to join. But yeah, no, absolutely. I'm very excited to see in these upcoming fall practices. Our first is on this Wednesday morning. I can't wait to see how they'll adapt. And as we get closer to week 1 against Indiana, who will be accompanying Dean Patterson for the first snap of the game for the Panthers.
Excellent stuff, Jake. As you said, it is exciting to see where they're going to fall. I think Dean Patterson was a guy that was made a few guys honorable mention lists, so he's not far off there, and certainly will catch some eyes. And I would assume he's probably going to catch some eyes of NFL scouts as the year moves on as well. Just again to highlight some of those guys that were missed. We got Louisiana Tech. I mean, I'm sure Evan would probably share the same sentiment as me. Louisiana Tech is going to have a rough year. Marquise Crosby returns. That's kind of their highlight. Nearly 1,000-yard rusher 2 years ago, 9 touchdowns. They do pick up Texas State transfer Denario Davenport, 500-yard rusher there at Texas State alongside with TJ Finley. So that's kind of their strength. The wide receivers and tight ends for the Bulldogs are in a complete rebuild. So I'm not sure if you've heard Evan speak on our roundtable before. He's not very optimistic, and I would probably share that with him with his skill position. On to UTEP. I know that Ben from the March to the Pod shared the same sentiment as I do whenever I first previewed UTEP. It's mostly Austin P 2.0. Coach Walden brings on Javon Jackson, Cam Thomas, Trey Goodman, all guys who are excellent at the FCS level. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what they're capable of doing. Ben, do you kind of have any 2 cents on what you describe as little brother over there?
Yeah, I don't know about little brother, but maybe. I know our UTEP and Sam Houston fans have been getting into it recently. But yeah, it kind of feels like Austin P 2.0 over at UTEP. I do like Javon Jackson. I think he had 1,350 yards rushing at Austin P last year. And being a recent FCS school, those really high-end guys can contribute at the FBS level. Not all of them can. You see Noah Smith. He's one for us that has really translated to this level. So we'll see how it pans out. I think Jackson is probably the one I'm most secure about. I put him in my honorable mention just because he had such a big year at Austin P, moving over to UTEP. So a lot of unknowns with UTEP, just so many new guys. I think UTEP's probably a year or 2 away with Scotty Walden, obviously doing great things in the high school ranks, but it takes a year or 2 for that to kind of come to fruition. So we'll see what they have this year with Austin P 2.0.
Absolutely. Well, we'll move on. Kind of the same process there with guys that are teams that are still preparing for the FBS. Kennesaw State, the entire team for the most part sat out last year in preparation for FBS. I think a name for a lot of people to keep an eye out on, and it's very easy to get confused because I did all the time whenever I was doing a preview for this episode was running back Michael Benefield and then wide receiver Gabriel Binyard. So Benefield, 400 yards on 4 touchdowns, 8 games last year, and then Gabriel Binyard, the wide receiver, who I think was going to end up making Conference USA probably 2nd or 3rd team by the end of the year. In just 4 games last year, 4 touchdowns, 300 yards, and all of those were against FCS opponents that I think the number was 3 of the 4 made the FCS playoffs last year. So not necessarily slouches either for FCS games. So Gabriel Binyard, a name for the Owls to keep an eye out for. And for those that are listening now or listening in post-production, tap our friends over at Owl Chat Podcast. Get them on the show. They're a part of the roundtable, believe it or not, but they've been real difficult to get a hold of. And so we'd love to hear their take on it, as well as the other Kennesaw State fans. I know you guys are just as excited as we are to be joining the conference. And then lastly, I'll talk about New Mexico State. The transfer portal has completely demolished them, as we all know. It's a bunch of JUCOs. The one that I did mention was Monte Watkins, who made our honorable mention. He is kind of a threat in the backfield, really speedy back. So outside of him, the rest of them is just a bunch of JUCO guys. So I don't really want to spend too much time because I don't know what to expect from New Mexico State. I don't expect a lot, but I expect very little from those guys. But as we wind down the episode, guys, this is a topic that I had saved for the last episode that we had to throw out for technical difficulties. But now that we've got a few of us here, I'd love to hear your take on it. If you had an opportunity to look at the Vegas odds for each team's over under, and I don't have a graphic here to post up for it, but just some things that I thought stood out. And while those of you are here, I'd love to hear your take on it. The big number that stood out to me was Liberty at 10.5. I think some could view that as probably the perfect number. I think a lot of people see it at 11-1. But Ben, I'd love to hear your take in regards to where that 10.5. You think over under is that a good fit? What do you think?
I'm going under. Uh-oh.
Whoa.
I might have
Calm down.
Somebody. All right. Whoa. What? Okay. We're good here. I got a couple of people watching me, I guess. I don't know. I'm still here in Lynchburg, so you just never know when you say that type of stuff. But I really do believe that we're going to go under this year. It sounds terrible, but I think the Conference USA is a lot tougher this year. Yes, we've improved greatly, but we do have to play App State, and I think ECU is going to be very much improved, and I think people are going to be a little bit shocked with those two games. I think we lose one of them. I really do. Yeah, it's really hard to say. That's, I guess, why I'm stumbling over my words and umming so much. It's hard to describe because Chadwell said back in spring ball, because we had an early spring ball, so we had a kind of an early preview. So I haven't really thought about this team for a little while, in the sense of like had the deep dive. I've been doing some research here and there and trying to watch some highlights here and there. With the busy life that I have right now, it's going crazy, especially in summertime with my career. I've kind of sat back and pondered on it, but I really do think we're going to go under. And Chadwell said in the spring, I meant to say this, Chadwell said we're going to be a better team, but that doesn't mean a better record. And I really believe that. So I see us going 10-2. I really do. I'm going to stand by that until I see what this offense looks like without a true number one receiver. So
humble from Ben. I hope he's all right. This is a different look from Ben. Everyone else, you guys agree with Ben's his prediction there? He's thinking under 10.5.
I think it's 50-50. And I think I was listening to Josh Pate. Most people know who Josh Pate is the other day. And I think on FanDuel, Liberty has the best odds to go undefeated of any team in the country this year. Not saying they will, but I just thought that number was interesting. I think it's 50-50, maybe lose a conference game, lose an ECU, App State, maybe. And so we'll see. I think it's 10 or 11 wins, no fewer than 10.
All right.
Agreed.
Well, then,
yeah, I don't think we go any lower. So.
Yeah, I think that's why I said it's a waffling number at 10.5. I could see it 10-2, 11-1. Neither one of those would really surprise me. So I think Vegas, as they always do, seem to hit it on the head there. But our next highest past Jacksonville State's at eight games, and then Western Kentucky. Steven, you're at seven games is what the DraftKings has you at. I thought that was kind of a low number given their recent success. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, I've seen 7. I've seen 7.5 being our over under, and I think that's probably a pretty perfect. 8.5 would have made it a really tough decision because I think we easily could. We could lose 3 of our out of conference games. Alabama, you almost can chalk that one up. Then we've got a really tough Toledo team, and then we're at Boston College, and then in conference it seems like we always stumble in at least one game that maybe we shouldn't. But I wouldn't be surprised to see us lose, up to 2 out of conference games. And the same with in conference. I think we could go 6-2 as well. So I'm hoping for at least 8 wins. 9 or 10 would be amazing. But in my opinion, I think 7 and 8 is kind of that floor of where we should be. If we hit 7, it's probably going to be a pretty disappointing season as far as the results on the field. I think 8 and 9 wins is easily attainable if the team and the offense stays healthy and just produces like we know they can and have in recent years.
There you go. Steven's endorsing gambling, and he says to take the over on WKU for the 7 wins. Next, I want to hear Ben. I think Ben from March to the Pod. This is your number at 4.5. I think is ridiculously low given the expectations that you have set for us here on the Conference USA Roundtable, as well as everyone else across the country. 4.5 seems atrocious. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a little interesting because most betting odds have us 4th. The 4th place team to win the conference, and then they have us at 4.5 wins. So it kind of contradicts one another. I've kind of set the window for this year between 5-7 and 7-5. I don't think we'll go above 7 wins. I think 5 wins is kind of the floor. Even if you play pretty much the same way you did last year, if the ball rolls differently twice, I mean, you're 5-7 already. So, and I think this team has a lot more depth and a little bit more talent. So I think 6-6 is where we're going to slot in, not endorsing gambling, but I would lean towards the over. And like I said, the betting odds just don't make a lot of sense when you look at odds to win the conference and then over/under win totals. It's kind of interesting how those two line up.
Well, I will endorse it for you. I am putting my mortgage on Sam Houston over 4.5. I feel pretty good about that one. Jake Gibson, our other Jake. We'll turn it over to you. You're in the same boat. 4.5 wins for the FIU Golden Panthers. What do you think?
Well, gambling is legal here in South Florida now, so I can advertise as much as I want. But no, I think 4.5 is fair for FIU, considering the fact that they have had back-to-back 4-8 seasons. I mean, something's got to give if FIU wants to make this push to become a much better program in Conference USA. I think all the fans and pretty much everybody are begging to see something more from FIU this season. And granted, it's like the first time in Mike McIntyre's time as the head coach here at FIU that he's had a program with players on both offense and defense and his coaching staff that's the most to his liking than ever before. I do feel confident that FIU will pass that 4-win mark, get to either 5 or 6. I think that's the question. It's 5 or 6 for the FIU Panthers, and obviously you want to hit that 6 mark so you can make it to a bowl game. A month and a half ago on an episode of the podcast, myself and Kevin both predicted that FIU would finish the season with a 7-5 record. Johnny went overboard and went like 10-2 or something. I was like, all right, Johnny. But no, we do feel confident that FIU can walk away with a much better record than what Vegas feels, especially considering a relatively favorable non-conference schedule. Aside from Indiana to start the season, you have a favorable matchup against Central Michigan. You have a tight contest against FAU that you could definitely take advantage of, and you have an FCS school. And obviously some of the smaller teams in Conference USA that FIU can jump on, that includes UTEP, New Mexico State, and Kennesaw. We don't even have to take on Western Kentucky this season, which is a massive plus for us because we don't have a great track record against them. So I still feel confident that we can hit that 7-win mark, but at the very least, we want to hit 6 wins, and I do think that is possible for this FIU school. So again, I can advertise gambling if you want. I'll definitely have to put a bit of money on the over for the FIU Panthers this season.
We'll keep Johnny out of the Hard Rock Casino because he must be prepared for NCAA football. I mean, 10-2, that would be a miraculous season. I think you guys you'd throw a parade there in Miami.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Well, to piggyback off of what Jake's saying, and I think and Ben's kind of saying the same thing, and when we did all of our preseason ranking of the conference, we all talked about how the 4 through 7 spot was interchangeable. You could throw anybody in there, and someone could be the beneficiary of winning those 50-50 ball games, and they find themselves at 7-5, maybe even 8-4, or you could be on the losing end of that, much like we saw with Sam Houston State last year, who was probably the best team with the worst record. I think that they were just on the losing end of a lot of those matchups. So you could find yourself, again, they're at the 4-8 mark as well. So an MTSU's mark, for those curious, is 5 wins. And whenever we had gotten Derek Mason on the show back in the spring and we got to watch a little bit of the practice, I predicted around a 5-7 mark as well. If we could get to 6 wins, that would be absolutely miraculous. I think, again, we would probably throw a parade for Derek Mason because he has nearly 60 guys that has signed from either high school or junior college. So it's an entirely new roster. I think we're top 5 in the country in roster turnover. So 6 wins would be great. The non-conference schedule is not helpful at all. So if we can win those 50-50 games, as discussed in Conference USA, I think the Blue Raiders could find themselves on the plus side of the 5-win mark. Guys, it's been a pleasure having everyone back on again. Any kind of closing remarks in regards to the offensive skill positions? I know Ben's down on himself. I hope he's okay. But where's our excitement level moving forward as we're a month out from football season starting?
Yeah, I mean,
hey,
fall
listen,
camp
bold
starts
prediction.
Whoa, you go for it.
Oh, bold prediction real quick, and this is my last thing. Western Kentucky is going to be the second best wide receiver group behind Liberty. I'm back, baby. Y'all thought I was down.
There he is.
I'm back.
Oh, man. Yeah, I was just going to say most fall camps get started this week or close to it, so it's about that time. It's exciting.
Johnny's bugging me in the chat saying FIU has an underrated offense, top 5. Oh, no, and he just says FIU has a top offense. So just for the sake of Johnny who's tuning in, I'm just going to acknowledge that. And, yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate everyone tuning in to the CUSA Roundtable. Just to note, we will be moving these to bi-weekly. So our next episode will be in 2 weeks from today. Unfortunately, if you're rewatching this on YouTube, we'll have it uploaded hopefully at some point onto the Twitter account, so you can rewatch this on Twitter. But we will hopefully have our live streaming up to date with Twitter and all of their updates. But otherwise, appreciate everyone tuning in, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. See ya.
Pause up.
Awesome, guys.